the illustrious brother, excuse me, Moses Gomez. Moses?
Thank you, brethren. Thank you for the introduction, and good evening to you all. And once again, a pleasure to be here to present the little lecture that I created early this year due to the pandemic. I started doing research, and I realized how similar what went on back then in 1918 and went on now. And we're going to go through a little bit of what happened back then. And again, the pandemic back then was affected the world, affected worldwide. Considering that travel wasn't even really accessible back in those days, but yet it came in successive waves. There were 4 waves, 2 waves in 1918, one each in 1919, 1920. And it affected quite a few million people. Now, 500 million people, so they say, were infected. They estimate between 17 and 50 million people died, depending on what group you use and what records you use. It's really hard to tell to get an accurate account. But here in the United States, it was about 675,000 people. So it was a major pandemic, and it affected the United States. And believe it or not, although it was called the Spanish flu, there's claims that it actually started in Kansas. Now, the first known outbreak happened here in Kansas at Haskell County in Kansas. It was actually part of the military base. So they claim that might have been the actual place where it actually started because of the men coming back to and from the war in Europe. Now, if you notice some of the photos back then, it is not much different now. People were wearing masks. I love the slogan, coughs and sneezes spread diseases. This disease actually back then, they kind of knew exactly how it would spread. They realized it could be spread by water droplets. Of course, their PPEs were much, much antiquated than ours. But again, a lot of the similarities were very there. And sadly, it seems like we haven't learned much in 102 years. It seems like a lot of the issues we're having today, they had back then as well. Now, to prevent the influenza, they themselves kind of knew exactly how to prevent, even though some of them were a little bit weird. Keep your mouth clean, keep your clothes clean, keep your body clean. I don't know what that means about keep your body clean, because usually you shower every day, but back then I guess people didn't shower every day, and hygiene wasn't, washing clothes I guess wasn't easily available for everybody every day. So, but again, they realized that if you keep your body, your clothes, your hygiene was very important, and of course keep your face covered, cough, avoid sneezes, cough in the cuff of your arm as opposed to out in the open. No different than much of our instructions today to keep ourselves virus free. Now, the 3 big ones back then, what they call the 3 C's, was clean skin, clean mouth, and clean clothes. And again, it's hard to think that, you have to tell people today to keep clean and keep your skin clean and bathe and shower. But I guess back then it wasn't so. So these were some of the instances where hygiene was very important, but they kind of realized that, hey, maybe it's time that we do shower every day and wash our clothes every day and stay clean. They also realized that cold weather would bring on the onset of more cases because people are indoor more. Also, they realized that fever was a key sign of having this virus. So again, a lot of the similarities back then to what we're going through now, including even having the issues with wearing masks. Now, I know here in the United States, it's been a big deal. Who wears it, don't wear it, back and forth. And I'm not getting into all the politics of it. But even back in 1918, there were individuals who fought against, because they realized they felt that their civil rights were being infringed on. So they fought against having open ordinances to wearing masks out in the open. Now, many cities imposed these ordinances, like in Pasadena and San Francisco, which fostered the Anti-Mask League. And the Anti-Mask League was created to go against these ordinances that these cities would actually putting forth. You can actually get summons, you can actually pay a fine. So again, not much difference 102 years later, where we're still, many are still arguing that point. I'm in public, I'm in a park, it's my right to not to wear a mask. And again, they had the same issues 102 years ago back then. Even though there were the Red Cross was, strongly suggesting that people social distance and that people wear the mask. You had signs: wear your mask, obey the city ordinances, or get fined. But the other thing was that people also got virus COVID friendly. I say now everybody is getting tired of being home and tired of not being at work and tired of being isolated. The same happened back then, and a lot of times people would go out and gather in large locations, and this caused many spikes in many cities here in the United States, which killed a lot of people. That pandemic was much more deadlier than this one. I guess technology is much better now, and the fact that we can get the vaccines are coming out as of today. They're out here in the United States, so it is a big difference. But again, it's the lack of cooperation, the lack of people following the rules that also increased the numbers back in 1918. Here's again, you see some signs: churches, schools were closed, shows were closed. So it was no different than today. You had many Broadway shows are closed and theaters are closed. A lot of houses of worship are closed and schools are closed, which have been bringing up issues, and people complained back then, as they do now, that it's their right to gather at a social function or at a particular house of worship. But again, there's very similarities compared to back then as it is today, dealing with the two. We had many signs like spit spreads death. So they realized from the onset that water droplets, that saliva, that certain fluids from the body can actually spread this disease. So they were quite ahead of their time back then. But again, a lot of people did not hear the precautions, including Philadelphia. Philadelphia had their second wave actually hit about 3 times as high as the first wave, and it was devastating in Philadelphia. They lost thousands of people died because of it, and this was because they had a major parade after the armistice signing, the ending of World War I. People went out and celebrated. They just wanted to get out. They wanted to celebrate the end of the war. And Philadelphia threw this huge parade, this huge party, which caused quite a bit of infections. Excuse me. Now, throughout this pandemic, Masons and Masonic temples and Masonic Grand Lodges actually did help in this cause and stepped up to the plate. The Masonic home in upstate New York actually was opened to accept and assist those who were sick. They also had, the Grand Lodge in New York also had a war relief committee, which was quickly also incorporated as the influenza committee as well, to help deal with volunteers and those who were sick and those brethren who needed assistance and help. Now, the influenza mentions several times in the Grand Lodge proceedings that the superintendent of the Masonic home in Utica, which is a large Masonic home that the Grand Lodge in New York has, reported that 124 children had gotten sick with the influenza and had all recovered under the care of the Masonic home. Right Worshipful Horace W. Smith, the Grand Lecturer, also states and reports many times that the influenza had interfered with much of his itineraries, causing postponement and cancellations of many events throughout the jurisdiction. Again, in the Grand Lodge of Alberta, we see that they provided, at her nursing headquarters, they provided telephones and volunteering individuals to help the staff of those who were working there at that particular nursing station. And they had brethren working different shifts, 6 to 8 at a time, would actually come in and staff that office. Here in Hopeton, Illinois, the coronavirus hit quite strong here, and this commercial club, which was a Masonic building, was converted quickly into the Red Cross. And this we see quite often throughout the United States during the first pandemic. We see that many Masonic temples were quickly converted because Masonic temples were able to be made good use of because of the space inside the temples. Now, in the major cities, there was many buildings and many spaces available. But in the rural suburban areas around the United States, usually the Masonic temple was actually one of the biggest places to gather or meet in that. It was like a community center in those small little rural cities. Now, Masonic temples, as we know, usually have large kitchens. They have large collation rooms. The lodge room is quite empty or spacious. There's not much furniture inside, not many walls. This made it suitable for the Red Cross to come in and move in and turn them into makeshift hospitals or annexes to the hospitals, where the less infirm could be sent here, or those injured or sick, not dealing with the pandemic, could be sent here, and then the hospitals can deal with the more serious patients and victims from this pandemic. And this we see widespread throughout the United States. Now, one interesting story that really hit home with me, was the Brethren of Asheville, North Carolina. Again, this was a Masonic temple that was converted and handed over to the Red Cross. And in the beginning, the directing officers of that building, if you have not already done so, you will once again begin your cooperation with the Red Cross Influenza Committee. The Masonic temple conveniences have been placed at the disposal of the committee. An emergency kitchen is busy preparing nourishing food for the needy. So those who were out of work and those families who needed food and needed something to eat or shelter, this lodge had kitchens prepared. But the interesting story was that because of the segregation in the South, the main hospital in this community was not able to be segregated. Now, it's amazing that in this horrible time of this pandemic, that people of color or African Americans had to be put aside and couldn't be treated because we couldn't treat white and blacks together in the same room. So the Masonic Temple decided they would open up their building and offer it to the Red Cross so that those African Americans who could not be integrated into a hospital can be taken care of here with the assistance of the Red Cross and the Brethren. And it goes on to say that the Red Cross writes that the words cannot express the gratitude the Red Cross and the people of Asheville owe to the Masonic Order of our city. As individuals, the members have been generous with their contributions of money, and the order as a whole has turned out to meet this emergency and has practically given over the entire building and equipment for its use. The debt this city, Asheville, owes should never be forgotten. And that really strikes home because, I understand it's over 102 years ago and Jim Crow laws were around and segregation was around. But to think that you couldn't offer an American citizen aid because of the color of their skin is really just incredible. But the fact that the Masons came up and stepped up to the plate, not just donated the building to the Red Cross, but actually made it available for that purpose so that these African Americans could be treated where the care that should have been given was not given at a regular hospital. Again, we see in Kankakee, Illinois, that Masonic Temple was turned over to the Red Cross. And in Forsyth, Montana, this was kind of the main street of that little city in Montana. That's probably the biggest section of the town there. And in the center was the Masonic building. Of course, it was the largest building. It had the largest open venues inside. The rooms and the halls were quite spacious. So it quickly became an easy place for Red Cross to tap as they traveled around the country. And maybe hospitals were a little bit too far away. And this would be a sure place for the Red Cross to come in and set up a little shop in these buildings and offered, restrooms, offered kitchens, offered collation rooms, offered spacious halls, be able to, and some lodges had multiple lodge rooms. So it became an interesting place and a perfect place for Red Cross to operate. Also, at the end of the pandemic, the Red Cross was donating $500 to $1,000 to various Masonic temples throughout the country as a thank you for the use of their buildings for that prolonged period of time. So in many instances, the Red Cross actually donated money and gave money to the Masonic temples as a thank you for their cooperation, what they were doing. Now, in modern times, we have many grand jurisdictions and lodges have done their bit for doing this cause. Here in New Jersey, our Grand Lodge kept its members well informed with many updates during the unprecedented times, while also addressing the needs and concerns of its constituents. Many of its members throughout its jurisdiction have dedicated and provided assistance for many of its members, first responders, community, and healthcare workers. And this is the true meaning of strength and unity. Now, here in my own district, here in New Jersey, which is comprisely made up of, this 6th district is made up of lodges that work in the Spanish language and Portuguese language. This was created about 2 years ago in 2018. And what these brethren will do is every couple of days, they would post a little message on a Facebook page on the 6th district website saying, tomorrow we're going to meet at XYC restaurant and we're all going to pitch in a few bucks and we're going to buy some food. And they would pick a location and they would just serve the individuals working that particular moment, that shift. So they would go to a sheriff's department, fire department, police department. They would go to hospitals, and they would go to the emergency room, or they would go to the COVID floor or the COVID unit and say, here, listen, we can't feed the whole hospital, but we just want to let you know that we're here for you, and we want to show you appreciation by giving you a nice home-cooked, warm meal from a real restaurant instead of eating all these fad foods. And, food was not always accessible, and these poor healthcare workers and first responders having to really just grab what they can here and there. So it was really comforting to know that we were providing a warm meal, but also providing the support and comfort that these individuals needed. They even went as far as providing pet supplies and pet care and food to a animal shelter, so that this is something I didn't realize while I was one of those going to the supermarket and buying whatever I could get my hands on in case things got bad. I totally forgot about my dogs, and when I went to go get dog food a couple of days later, I realized that the shelves were bare, and it didn't dawn on me that, hey, people were hoarding up not just toilet paper and soup, but they were hoarding up dog food and animal supplies as well. So here, what they did was they bought supplies. If you had a pet and you couldn't get the proper food, or you didn't have enough food or supplies, then you can go to the shelter and they would give out what they had there. So even pets were being thought of during this moment of crisis. This lodge in Massachusetts decided to use the COVID crisis as an opportunity to strengthen its relationship with the members, raise money for a good cause, and support the local Masonic-friendly businesses in town. The other instance here, we see that at the Princess Alexandra I Pavilion in Edinburgh, Scotland, the nurses and the healthcare workers at this unit had a small little tiny refrigerator, which of course there were many on staff, many working long hours and shifts, and it just wasn't big enough to hold proper food or much food in it. So they decided to donate this wing and this unit here a full-size refrigerator, so that the hospital workers can at least bring food from home, or if they did order food, that they can at least keep it in refrigerator and keep it readily at hand. So this was just a small gesture. It wasn't food, but it was a much needed object that they really needed, that really made a difference for them, instead of trying to cram all their little food in there, or only if you were eating at a particular time could you put your food in there. Now they were able to eat and have their food safely stored in the refrigerator. In New Jersey, as did many jurisdictions, as you brethren out in Washington did as well, or are doing as well now, is that we provided programs of fellowship during the COVID pandemic. And we provided, here in New Jersey, we did it with the Scottish Rite, we did it with Allied Masonic Degrees, we did it with the Grand Lodge. I was organizing many of these speakers for all these different appendant bodies: Royal Arch, Royal Select Masters, Cryptic Masonry, Commandery. And what we do is we provide educational speakers from around the world and around the country. Since most lodges were closed and most jurisdictions were down, like here in New Jersey, right now we're down to only a limit of 10. It's getting quite worse here, and restaurants are probably going to be shutting down in the next few days as well, as they did in New York. So this was another avenue to keep the brethren engaged, keep the brethren communicating, and keeping that fellowship. Even though it was a virtual fellowship, it was a way of keeping us together during these harsh times. Now, Scotland even created a wonderful Facebook page called Scottish Constitution Freemasonry Supports. And what this is, this allowed the different Scottish Constitution lodges around the world to post what they are doing for their members, for their community, and for their jurisdiction on this Facebook, so that everybody can share around the world to see the beauties of what Freemasonry is doing. And although this really doesn't directly assist anyone, it is shining light on what this Masonic fraternity does. And it's also influencing other lodges to say, well, this lodge was selling pins. Well, maybe we'll sell ties, or maybe we'll sell shirts, or maybe we'll have a blood drive. So it inspired many other Masonic lodges to do the same. And this is every week the Grand Master Mason posts updates concerning this website, and it's just growing by leaps and bounds, with tens of thousands of people that have joined in and are putting pictures on a daily basis from around the world. And just to give an idea of some of the pictures that I was able to grab from there, in the Edinburgh Masonic Food Initiative was a drive that was created by the brethren, the lodges in Edinburgh. And there they prepare foods in this kitchen, which is a commercial kitchen. And they prepare professional foods, which are professionally boxed and stored and then sent out to those who need, not just Masons, but the community at large. This lodge here, Hope Town of St. John Lodge, number 1232, decided that their way to help was to sell these pins to help, the growing need for those volunteers providing hot meals for the community. So they decided to sell tokens or pins to raise money to donate to these organizations. The Scottish Rite out in Missouri, the Life Foundation, they quickly altered that to create the Life Foundation COVID-19 crisis, which helps those who have lost jobs, school closures, and unforeseen challenges due to this pandemic. And now keep in mind that many families send their children to school, not just to be educated, but also because they can be watched for 8 hours while the parents work, which allows them to have a second job or the second spouse work. It also provides nutritional meals, which most families can't afford 2 or 3 meals a day. So this impacts many families on all different levels. And this relief here was created to help assist those individuals who now have children at home and one of the parents has to stay home. We can provide food, we can provide assistance, we can provide their needs and whatever case may provide, each on a case-by-case basis. This particular lodge here opened its organization and sponsored during the influenza. They had a beautiful 2-story building. Again, this was probably a small community, Ames, Iowa, not too many buildings, but again, they opened up their building on this particular block to help offset the individuals who were affected, as particularly the orphanage, who was hit hard with 250 children being sick at one time. So this was a way of assisting that community there. The lodge also created kind of a DoorDash or Uber Eats, where if you wanted food or you needed food or a warm meal, you would drive to the lodge, fill out this card, and then at a particular time or moment, you'd hand the card in and then give you the food, what you wanted. So you actually filled the card out and you got the meal provided. So it was almost like a modern day Uber Eats or DoorDash, where they provided the food for you. They didn't deliver it, but you had to get it. In some cases, the lodge did bring it to some of the brethren in the community, but for the most part, you would go there, fill the card out, and then they would provide you with that meal. Some lodges opened up and had blood drives for the much needed, plasma and blood that we had. So we had, although many Masonic lodges do this on a regular basis, here in New Jersey, during the height of the COVID, we actually donated an extra 4,000 pints of blood during this time. Many lodges were drop-off points for PPEs and food drives. And then they had members of the lodge that would put aside to separate the food and sort it out, and then make like little care packages with particular food items, non-perishable, and also PPEs that the brethren in the community come pick up at their pleasure. And here again, we see this lodge here. Now, brethren, that's a pretty well prepared. I mean, that's like a commercial, a business there preparing that food. That is being produced on a mass scale. When you look at the way it looks and the way it's prepared and the containers, this is a very well thought out, very organized program they're running here. And again, this is done by a lodge, which is helping those in the community by handing out food to those who need it. This lodge and this brother decided that they had access to many cleaning supplies and sanitary equipment, which was also much needed and much in demand. And they were able to buy many of the sanitary and disinfectants much needed and delivered to the Masonic homes so that they can be kept clean and kept sanitized and keep the infections, the spread of infections down. So again, everybody did something in their own unique way. Some people had access to food, or some people had access to PPEs, and some people had access to, lodges had access to cleaning materials, and everybody pitched in their own best way they could. Here we see the same thing. We had food drives. This particular lodge was open around the clock, and they had different individuals manning it, brethren manning it at any given time. And you can drop off PPEs or non-perishable foods, canned foods and donations there. And then the lodge throughout the week, brethren and the sisters would come out and put this all together and make care packages, and that could be distributed to those in need in particular, and the members of the community. And keeping in mind that the majority of the people that were being assisted were non-Masons, which goes to show the extent that Masonic institution and the brethren go. It wasn't just about taking care of ourselves, but it was taking care of the community. And believe it or not, most of this actually went to the community. Again, we see blood drives. We see the Sea Caucus Hudson Lodge decided to visit their police station and provide the tour of officers working that day with a more meal. And again, it wasn't that they were really needy of it, or it wasn't that we were, these police officers were missing a meal. It was just a way of saying thank you, we're supporting you, we're here, and we're thinking about you. And that goes a long way when the public, is in good favor and recognizes what these first responders and healthcare workers are going through. Even the United Grand Lodge of England pitched in by creating the Freemasons COVID-19 Community Fund. And it was, again, not to support just Masons, but to support the community at large in your jurisdiction. And this was, again, donating of non-perishable foods, PPEs, which would then be distributed to the community at large, whoever needed it. In the Scottish Rite, the Northern Masonic jurisdiction, our Sovereign Grand Commander, illustrious David Allen Glatley, posted a memo out that he sent a letter out to all his constituents in the Northern Masonic jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite, of course, advising everybody that follow your local and state ordinances, follow your government ordinances. If you have to be closed and cancel meetings, that just go ahead and cancel it. But again, also, more importantly, to keep your eyes and ears open to those members and the community at large who may need assistance. And the Scottish Rite always has been and is today donating money to those who need it. And the wonderful message that the commander has is that he makes sure that he instructs all his leaders that you give this money to any Mason who needs it. They don't have to be a Scottish Rite Mason, and it's not a precursor to we're giving you money because we want you to join. It is an outright way of just taking care of one brother, taking care of another. And it's a wonderful way the Scottish Rite is actually working. Now, the members in Massachusetts of the Scottish Rite and the consistory and the commandery, early on, with the lack of the PPEs, as the meetings when the buildings were closed, some of these brethren decided they were going to go out and purchase PPEs and make little care packages. And you see our illustrious Sovereign Grand Commander holding a box and a care package that he received. And inside there's gloves, there was masks, there were sanitary agents in there. And again, the local health system, including the Masonic health system, but the local hospitals there also reached out because they were very short on PPEs and supplies in the hospitals. Healthcare workers at one point were really suffering with the demands of face masks and gowns. And so this was very important. And they actually went out and bought an enormous amount of money worth of PPEs and donated that to these causes in these Masonic health system and to the Overlook Health System there in the Boston, Massachusetts area. And again, they spent quite a bit of money and they raised quite a bit of money overall. I believe it was like $18,000 that they actually raised. And the Massachusetts consistory and commandery each donated $5,000 on top of that. So this was and you can see how the setup was. This was professionally done, professionally packaged, and professionally sent out to everybody. But again, brethren, it's worldwide. We see here we have people in the Philippines. We have people in South Africa. We have the District Grand Lodge of Lebanon. We have many individuals and brethren around the world that are actually pitching in their own unique way to either give money, food, care packages, PPEs, assistance. Even the Philippines, they gave out boxes of chocolate-coated macadamia nuts. It was just their little way of giving a care package or something to lift the spirits of those in need. Again, we see here the Fiji Islands, we see South Africa, we see Bangkok. Again, everybody donating in their own special way, however they could, and assisting in whichever way they could. It could have been giving toys to children in a hospital to lift up their spirits. So every way possible, Masons around the world were kicking in and putting their best foot forward during these times. The Grand Lodge of Massachusetts also created the HELP program, which is the Hospital Equipment Loan Program. And this was meant to provide equipment, blood drives to the Red Cross. They supplied meals, they delivered PPEs, they gave gifts to lift the spirits of many a brother or a friend in need. And this was done throughout the entire community, through the entire state of Massachusetts. So this was a program that was quickly created during the onset of the COVID and has done very well. And again, it shows how the Masonic community really does care, not just for its members, but for those in their community at large as well. Now, brethren, I've always said that out of something bad, something good comes out. And nobody, if you would have told me a year ago that most meetings would be held virtually, I would have told you you're out of your mind. But again, because of this pandemic, it has opened another avenue, another tool in our arsenal by being able to virtually communicate with each other and connect with each other. Now, this does have many positives, and even when the pandemic is eradicated or under control, I believe that this is a tool that many will still use and will be around, for the mere fact that this fraternity is a global fraternity, which is getting that much smaller with technology and every passing year. But virtual meetings allow brethren to meet around the world and come together in a way never had to before. But again, brethren, I stress this a lot. Since you may have live video or sound, be mindful of what you're saying and how you act, and avoid embarrassing moments. Please try not to eat and drink while you're on a virtual meeting, or at least, block off your video, and remember to mute yourself. Remember, the mute button is the best friend you have. Dress appropriately. Be aware of your surroundings. Remember, even though you are virtually streaming Masonic events from home or work, it is still an extension of your Masonic community, so please act accordingly. And the reason I say this is because I have done over 100 Zooms, and I have seen pictures with brethren with a clothesline, with their clothes, undergarments hanging behind them. I've seen brethren fall asleep. There was a brother who laid in bed and had the laptop on his chest. And I kept saying to myself, this is going to end horribly, because eventually he is going to doze off. And sure enough, he was dozing off, forgot to mute his button, and he was cutting wood like you wouldn't believe. I mean, he was sawing a lot of wood. It was amazing how everybody just had a kick out of it, But again, be mindful of your surroundings. You can use those virtual 3D, virtual backgrounds. Just watch where you are, and remember that when you're streaming, you're representing your Masonic jurisdiction, your Masonic lodge, your Masonic organization, and it's a reflection on Masonry and who you are as well. The other interesting note, brethren, is we isolate now, so when we gather, no one is missing. Remember to wear your personal protective equipment. Remember to properly put on and take off your PPEs. Also, make sure you dispose of your PPEs properly. Now, brethren, one of the things where I see quite often, and I'm going to try to do it here, and I hope you can all view it. It's very important to put your PPE on, but if you're going to put your personal protective equipment on, then you have to be mindful that you're doing so because you're trying to create a barrier between your body and the items you're touching or you're attempting to touch. So if you're putting on gloves, it makes no sense to touch your phone, to touch your keys, to touch your face and your hair. Whatever you're protecting your skin from, you're now putting it on your body. And I know, if you're first responders, you're not used to that. But in the first responder world, we're taught that when we put on gloves, like I'm doing here right now, when you put on your gloves or you put on your mask, remember that you're doing this as a way to block the pathogens from entering your body. So whatever you're touching in the professional field, in first responders, healthcare, we do this to protect ourselves from blood or bloodborne pathogens. But again, if you put this on, for whatever reason you're doing so, it's to protect yourself. If you do that and you're touching your eyes and you're touching your hair and you're touching your phone, I was in the supermarket and there was a young lady in front of me and she just touched her face and her eyes and her hair and her phone. And I'm saying to myself, I actually had to tell her, I said, ma'am, the reason you put the gloves on is to protect yourself from what you're touching. If you're going to put your gloves on and touch everything else, you might as well just not even put your gloves on. That's the reason why you're putting them on. There's also a very special way in how to take them off to prevent whatever is on those gloves that it doesn't get on your body. So what we do is, if you're right or left-handed, you pinch the glove here with my right hand. I'm going to pinch the bottom of my left hand, and you're going to invert the glove. So now whatever is on the outside contaminant is now inside. So now I'm grabbing the inside of my glove, which is contaminant free. Now holding that, you would grab the bottom of the other glove and invert it so that both gloves are now inside the actual glove. And I'm going to try that one more time so you can actually see it. You put on your gloves, and it's very important because it's a way of protecting yourself. Again, you pinch the bottom of your left or right, whatever hand you are, you start off with, and you invert it. And then while you have it there, you can grab it in your hand and you pinch the bottom of the glove and you invert it. So now both dirty sides of the glove are internal, and the inside becomes the outside, which is now contaminant free. The other important thing is, brethren, please dispose of it properly. I walk my dogs every day, and one thing I see now, the most litter in the street that I see is gloves and masks. Remember that somebody else has to pick that up, and somebody else has to go there and remove that from the ground. So you don't want to contaminate anybody. Be mindful, especially in this parking lots of supermarkets. Be mindful of those who have to work and clean up after you. Also, when you're removing your mask, if you've been breathing in that mask, remember to remove your mask and grab it and fold it and grab it from the outside, so that you're not touching whatever's on the inside with your bare hands. And now you touch your phone or your keys, or you enter into a pharmacy or a supermarket, and whatever you've been breathing, spitting, and coughing is now on your hands. This virus does live quite a bit outside the human body. You're now spreading it to those in other locations, and that's a way of spreading it too. So it's not just the water droplets that are coming out, but it's also the spread by the contaminants on hands that you touch other items and doors and keys and phones and whatnot. Now, brethren, the most important thing about this, and I think that we're all going to get through this. I have no doubt about that. Masonry has always been here, and just like it was here in 1918, it is here again in 1920, and I'm sure we'll be here in the future if should something like this happen again, which we hope not. But the beautiful thing about what came out of this, I believe, again, was the virtual meetings. Now, when you think about Freemasonry and thinking, in fact, that the world, especially in 1918, how Freemasonry was really kind of isolated. You really, unless you had money and could travel, you really couldn't experience the global Freemasonry or worldwide Freemasonry as we do today. That's something that was, easily done. But again, the one unique thing is that this virtual reality is allowing Masons around the world to gather together that much closely. And I think that it's going to help in several ways. One, it's going to help the fact that we can actually stay in contact with brethren from other jurisdictions, which we never had the opportunity before, unless you're a traveler like myself who traveled to many countries to speak. But this also affords the opportunity of lodges to invite quality speakers, which there are many. There's many, many wonderful speakers and brethren who do wonderful jobs, but maybe can't travel because they don't have the financial means, work restrictions, family commitments. So now imagine this is a way to invite a brother from halfway around the world to come speak at your Masonic event at practically no cost. I mean, you can make him an honorary member, you can send him an honorary gift, but for the most part, it's very cost effective for both parties to have this. And this can tap many wonderful resources of many brethren around the world that have much to say and much to teach and educate, which now allows this tool to come in. Some lodges can't afford to bring in speakers. So this is a wonderful way to do that. It's also a wonderful way to keep those brethren who are members of your lodge or might be infirm or might be elderly, maybe they can't drive at night, maybe they can't go out anymore, but they might have a grandchild or a daughter or a son who can turn the computer on, and guess what? Now you could be part of that fraternal experience. Here in New Jersey, we have what we call snowbirds. Many retirees leave for the winter to Florida and they come back in the summer. Those individuals who leave or have retired to Florida still have a affinity with their mother lodge. They pay their dues, but they don't get to share in that experience. What this does now is this tool allows you to quickly open, do business, close, and then have a program and invite these brethren who are members of your lodge but don't live in your immediate community, and they can engage each other. You can get them motivated again. Maybe they can go out again and visit lodges in their area where they live. But again, it's not just about getting your dues or your money's worth, but it's getting that enjoyment and that fellowship that is not easily accessible for someone living 1,000 miles away. Now they can click on a computer and have fellowship with their brethren of their mother lodge, regardless where they live. They could be in the military serving our country. They can, on a time off or on a break, click on and join the members of their lodge. Again, it offers a wide opportunity. But I think the greatest motivation is that it could offer is that, unfortunately, we're living in times where racism, bigotry, hatefulness, and evil are still present, in particular, in many lodges as well. But the also wonderful thing is that many of these lodges, many of these brethren, when you grow up in that lodge bubble or that district bubble, sometimes you're indoctrinated with that same routine all the time, and you don't really know Masonry Global. You only know what you see every day. And I believe that when brethren are open to a worldwide or a global fraternity, a global Masonry, and realize that we don't all come in the same way and manner, that we all don't look the same, we don't speak the same language, and we don't do it the same way, I think that it might open up these brethren and open up their minds and start accepting Masons that, yeah, we come in different colors, we come in different sizes, we believe in different gods and different faiths. But that's the beauty of Freemasonry. What makes our fraternity so distinct and so important and so special is that we accept men regardless of what creed, color, culture, or faith they profess. And unfortunately, there are some lodges that are still in that mindset. And this might open their eyes and realize to see something they have never probably seen before. And the reason I say this, because I always hear the story, there's a wonderful story of Malcolm X was indoctrinated in the Nation of Islam. And all he saw was what he was told. Now, when he decided to take his annual pilgrimage to Mecca, which every Muslim has to do once in their lifetime, when he got there, he realized that Islam or Muslims didn't come black. They came in all different shapes and all different colors and all different, they were blonde, blue-eyed devils that were there with him. And he realized that he was being led down the wrong path or being indoctrinated because of that close-mindedness. And that opened up his eyes and realized the beauty of his faith and his religion, that it comes in all different sizes and all different colors and shapes, and that it wasn't predominantly just people of, African Americans or black people here. That changed him, and it also ultimately he was assassinated for his thinking. But again, that's the same mentality that I put forth here during this lecture, that I believe that this tool is a wonderful way to open the doors to allow brethren around the world to meet in fellowship, virtually discuss, interact, and realize that we are a global fraternity, and it might soften some hearts and might open the doors and change people's mindset and minds that, that mentality of being racist or segregated or biased is a thing in the past, and we have to get past that in these modern times here today. So, brethren, I do apologize doing it from my car here, but we are preparing for a major blizzard nor'easter here. We're expecting at least 12 to 16 inches of snow within the next 48 hours. So we are preparing. So I'm coming in tonight to prepare our crew and prepare our facility for Wednesday's massive storm that we're hitting here. But thank you again for the opportunity to present. Brother Jim, if you want me to present my Cuba lecture next year, I'll be more than happy to do that. Brethren, may God bless all of you. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless all our veterans, past and present, all our first responders and healthcare workers, because it is by their sacrifice that we meet here today as free men and Freemasons. May God bless this fraternity. And in particular, I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful holiday season and a joyful, prosperous new year. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Moses. And yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion. I gotta find my partner in crime, Jeremy Yielding. Where are you? I can't spot you quickly.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. We have an offer for Freemasonry in Cuba as a presentation in the future. Are you on board for that?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll work at that. We'll work with you, Moses, on that one. I'm reminded that the words of Most Worshipful Brother Bill Sardone, the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of New York, as you were laying out everything that's happening all over the world, his words: Freemasonry does not stop. Yeah, we can't meet in lodge, but it doesn't mean we can't express the tenets of our craft. And it's fantastic to hear some of the amazing things. And again, it could be something very simple. It doesn't have to be grandiose because, as they say, everything's a matter of scale. It's just a matter of scale. I see that you're next to John Brett. John Brett collects magazines to deliver to a deliver to a senior center. John, you got to unmute.
Got it. Yeah, we actually, I've got 3 different organizations that give me magazines, piles of them every month. And I go by 17 different, not Masonic oriented, but they're retirement centers and healthcare centers, and pass out magazines. There's very little restriction that's involved with them. And even today, some of the magazines, some of the centers are still accepting magazines today. Some have, because of their problems in keeping themselves clean, they've closed down being able to receive those. But I've been doing it now for about the last 6 or 7 years, something like that, and it works great. I'll get as many as 50 or 70 or 100 magazines every month. And it's easy to do things like that because I do it on my time. I mean, there's no real schedule that says I have to do it at 8 o'clock on Tuesdays or something else like that. So it's easy to do projects like that. I took notes of some of the things that you referenced here, Moses. Thank you very much. Really insightful to be able to pick and choose on some other lodges and see how they've been able to operate. Thank you very much.
And again, like I said, it's go ahead, Moses.
No, I was going to say the one important thing that I wanted to mention was that it's been kind of hard to find information as to what happened back in 1918. And one thing I stress is that go through your lodge records and minutes and see what your lodge and jurisdiction might have gone through. But what I do say is keep this information that what's happening now, even though you're not meeting in lodge, have your secretaries keep this information going, write this stuff down so that 100 years from now, if something should arise again, brother in the future can look back and say what the brethren of 2020 did during this time. And that's how I got information. But it's been kind of pulling teeth trying to see many. I know in Jersey we were affected, but my lodge mentions nothing. The fact that I know our lodge did not meet because the Grand Master had put an edict out, but it mentions nothing that we canceled meetings because of the pandemic, that they did anything. Maybe they didn't. But again, it's important that many lodges and jurisdictions keep accurate accounts of what we're doing now, because this is a reflection of for the future. When they look back at us 100 years from now, they're going to say, wow, look what these brethren did. And it might, again, influence them 100 years from now, just like 1918 has influenced us now with all these wonderful stories. So it's very important to keep these documents and these minutes accurate so that future generations can find out what we are doing here. But brethren, like it or not, we don't own this generation. We don't own this fraternity. We're just leasing it. And it's incumbent on us to maintain it, preserve it, and make it that much better than when we received it to when we pass along to the next generation. It's not ours. We're just here for a short time and we're trying to do our best, but it's always nice to be able to reflect back and look back 100 years from now and say, wow, look what these brethren did. And look what Jim did. He had the Peanuts gang. What was the Peanuts gang? We don't know what that is.
So one thing, and then I want to turn it over to our Sovereign Grand Inspector General. I had a meeting today with Ken Gibson of Washington Masonic Charities. I just want to give you a brethren update because this is in harmony with what we're talking about today. The brethren of this jurisdiction have donated $20,000 to COVID relief that has gone strictly toward the fraternity, and another $54,000 to the Malden Pine City Fire Relief Fund. And so that's been outstanding. I just wanted to let you know that that's happening, that the money's being dispersed with the assistance of with the COVID one. It's strictly internal. With the Malden Relief Fund, it's being dispersed with the assistance of the Inovia Foundation, which is kind of boots on the ground, hands on down there. Moses, I know you got to duck out, but before you duck out, I do want to get some words from our Sovereign Grand Inspector General, Al Jorgensen. Al, if you'd be so kind.
Well, thank you very much, Jim, and thank you, Moses. It was really enlightening to hear what transpired some 102 years ago. In fact, you've got me set now on a research project because we did have in place at that time a Masonic Retirement Center, which was located not too far from the Tacoma Valley. And I'm going to find out what they did at that time. I know that it was pretty much a self-sustained operation, that being that they had not only the facility to house Masonic members and members of the other Masonic family organizations, but they also grew their own and raised their own livestock and that sort of thing. So they might have had the capability to provide additional assistance to the community at large. So it's a research project you set me on, and thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for the presentation tonight. It's always a pleasure to hear you speak, and you did a dynamite job for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, illustrious sir. Thank you for that.
So before we wrap up this evening, because again, Moses has got to get on the bridge and has got to do his thing. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to ask Brother Moses at all? Anything at all? And I'm going to just kind of look around the room here, make sure no hands aren't going up or anything like that. Because I'm looking at the names here, Moses. We've got many of the valleys in this Orient represented, and that's a fantastic thing.
That's wonderful to hear.
So that's and considering many of them had another presentation at 6 o'clock our time, so they came from there to here. So they've been at it. I do want to mention the Jim Turtleots here. Jim is chair of the Grand Lodge Veterans Affairs Committee, doing outstanding work out there. Jim, so good to see you. And if you want to share anything that's going on, by all means, please do so.
I don't have any news to share. The Masonic Charities will be in Malden on Friday. I can personally guarantee that Santa will be there spreading gifts and good cheer. Yeah, so we'll be busy down there on Friday. No, keep in mind during this holiday season, we got a lot of our military that's scattered around the world doing the Lord's work, and they're long ways from their family, so don't forget about them. So,
absolutely, thank you, sir. And I do mention Chuck Brockway. You and I were talking about a little project that you guys are that you and your lodge are working on right now.
Yes, thank you. We've been doing Operation Kids Smile for the last 20 years. This year, we're doing taking care of about 25 children, and I believe it's 8 families now that we provide clothing. We provide a toy, we provide a Christmas meal to each of those families. And it's very rewarding to see. Unfortunately, this year, of course, we can't have a party and do these things as a group. So individually, we'll go to the homes and deliver the things, but not maintain our distance. And we're looking forward to it. Had a lot of help. Thank you.
It's fantastic. Thank you, sir. So with that, again, Moses, again, I want to thank you so much. I call upon you so often, and you never turn me down. And I appreciate it. It touches my heart. And we'll work together to bring you back out either in January or February to talk about Freemasonry in Cuba, because that continues to fascinate me as a topic.
Absolutely. It's a brother. And remember, brethren, no matter what you do, big or small, it makes a difference. You can't change the world. You can only do it one step at a time, one person at a time, and that's all that counts. So feel proud of what you're doing. Feel extremely happy and joyful for what you're helping. If you can touch one human soul, then you've done your duty as a human being, and you've done your duty for the fraternity. So with that, I wish you all a very wonderful holiday season, joyful New Year. Brother Jim, thank you for hosting me again this evening. I'm always here for you, brethren, and when we can finally meet together, I will definitely look forward to heading back out to Washington again. I bid you all a wonderful evening. Stay safe and have a wonderful New Year. Thank you, brother.
Thanks, Moses. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.